No. Didn't cost but 30 grand.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. Let's call the meeting to order, please. Today is Tuesday, February 27th. We're here at the Civic Center for our monthly meeting. We'll stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adrian, if you call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin, Ms. Albrecht.
Here.
Mayor Kathy.
Here.
Mr. Wallace. Here. Mr. Putnam.
Here. I don't have any comments. Any council member?
I just have one. I want to acknowledge Tommy. We had the Gumbo cook-off last week, or the 17th. He did a marvelous job. He was on top of making sure the bathrooms were always clean, taking care of the trash. Special events committee just wanted to make sure that he was acknowledged, as I do. He did a tremendous job. So thank you, Tommy.
Right. Jerry, Brett? Okay. Citizens' comments? I think everyone here knows the rule. Any comments from our citizens? Okay. Under the consent agenda, we have one set of minutes, which is from February 13th. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Have a motion and a second. Any corrections or additions? Okay. There's no opposition. Let the record reflect. Motion carries 4-0. Jeff?
Good morning, Jeff Britton, Dewberry Preble Rish. Don't have a lot to report on this time. The main action item that's taken place over the last couple of weeks is last Thursday we held a pre-application meeting with DEP regarding the beach restoration project. We had 3 folks from our team go over to Tallahassee and sit down with the folks at DEP. Mel and I believe Kimberly called in to listen. We walked through the project, just got a feel for what their concerns were going to be, and from what I understand, it was a really good, productive meeting. We expressed to them the timeline that we're looking for to try to have permits in place by the end of October, beginning of November, and they can't commit to that timeline, but they understood it and they agreed to help us work towards it. So that's about as good of a meeting you're going to get out of DEP, I think. So, anyway. That's the big thing accomplished by us the last couple of weeks. If there's any questions on any other projects, I'm here to field them.
Did you get my email concerning the wall, the retaining wall?
I got one back at the end of January, or maybe the beginning of February. Has there been another one?
Did y'all get a copy of that?
You had made a request about doing something more globally on the cracks.
On the wall?
Yes, sir.
So y'all got the copy?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll
We'll
touch
make
base
sure
with
it
them
gets to Jeff.
and get with you after the meeting.
Okay.
If I could ask a question while we got Jeff up there, it kind of has to do with them a little bit. Parker Park FERDAP grant. We have that $50,000 that we're at the cusp of losing if we don't do something out there. And the approved projects are a splash pad or an adult playground. We nixed the splash pad idea. Now we're faced with, do we put the adult playground in? The original design called it to be more in the back of the area. We've had some people want it more in the front, but if it goes in the front, it might interfere with some of the events that goes there. So it was suggested that maybe we do, shall we say, a mini adult playground at a location that might work. That way we're using some of those funds and not just turning the whole $50,000 back in. So.
It has to be used at that park?
Yes, sir. For that purpose, they can't even you let us use it for pavilion or anything. It's got to be that purpose that the application was made for.
Well, I think that if we put, and you and I have talked about this, that if we put three or four, and I said 3 adult playground pieces of equipment towards the front, I can't see the people using it in the block back. I can't see it. I can see them using it in the front when they're looking out at the activity that we have in Mexico Beach. I don't think we need 9 or 10 of them, a huge,
They're expensive.
right, and we do have that grant.
I know, but 50 wouldn't cover 10 of them.
Right, no, and so if we put up 3 of them, I think that it might be well worth it. And it would draw more people up there to use the park. And, you know, my suggestion was, as you just come up the road to the park under that tree or around that tree, that wouldn't take away from a lot of space from the activities, because they're not under that tree usually. I don't see that it would take away, but I'm open to any other ideas of where it could be.
What's the deadline on this?
We have to get moving on that.
I think at end of December,
End of December.
2018.
Oh,
Right. So
I
we've
have
got
probably
some time.
500 pages worth of adult exercise equipment. Have I
Well-
shown that to anybody yet? Yeah. I mean, they've got, I mean, it's really nice, made for exterior use. But I'm much rather spend X number of dollars on 3 pieces than try to get a bunch of cheap stuff. I mean, because outside is just not gonna, it has to be built for that. And they've got all kinds of things that are available that can also be, if you go to an indoor gym, they've got the same thing for outdoor. And I'm talking about stretching exercises and things like that, that, you know, we all could use.
I could, a while back, we went out for bid for this project, got a couple of bids in, put together a package for the council. At that time, we decided not to do it, but I can resend all that out if you guys would like to give me some feedback on which pieces of equipment.
Something else to consider is that if we decide to send the $50,000 back and not utilize that grant, we're not put on the blacklist. You know, each year we're graded on the worthiness of the project that we're applying for. So if we say we don't want this one, that doesn't mean we can't get another one. So if we want to refocus on getting a pavilion, we can wait till the next cycle and apply for that. So
Yeah, but would we be limited cash-wise on the next go-around?
well, the grant's always for $50,000.
Okay.
That's the max.
Even though we didn't use it, if we didn't use it this year, it'd be 50 grand next year.
Nice try.
Okay, no, I'll bring you some of that stuff. I didn't show it to you, did I, Rick? Did I? Okay, Linda, I'll make a point, you get it, I'll leave it at
Okay.
$10.
So, what do we need to do anything?
Well, I think at this point, we're going to look at what pieces of equipment we might consider.
Right.
And the main question is exactly where we're going to put it. If we put it under the oak tree, you got the problem of the roots of the oak tree. You got the problem of the stuff falling down on it and the traffic. So I'm not even sure what a good location is, to be honest.
And then some of these examples that I see, it shows a canvas built up over the top of it, up 10 or 12 feet, that knocks the worst sun off and the worst weather off, which is not too expensive to do. So,
We have that included in that.
yeah, I saw, remember that one.
And I just talked to Jeff about it, and he thought that that would be able to fall under the grant, the cover, sun cover, so, something to see.
Yeah.
There's a company that's, I think they call them shade sails. You'll notice in a lot of the restaurants, they've actually taken the sails and figured a way to put them up and stretch them out of shades, and they last forever. I mean, I know it's been at the one for over 10 years now, and it looks just like brand new. So they're a little more expensive than your typical, but when you can get that long out of it, for the money, I think you end up doing a lot better. And I think it's called shade sails or sail shades or something like that. I can look it up and find it out for you, but They've got them in front of Fish Ales and several of the major restaurants over in Panama City on the beach and stuff. They still look great today.
I've got one, and it's all stainless steel cables, couplings, 10-year warranty. They are a little pricey, but they work.
I fear that we would be driven by the $50,000. I'm not convinced that that space, it's a great event space and green space. And to say we need a couple pieces up there, I guess if it was the location of it, I question putting too many things up there that just to be driven by the $50,000. I'm not, anything that would, to me, if we put it anywhere that would be in front of, considered front, meaning facing the highway in front of that restroom, erodes our space. Our ability to expand that park to what it needs to be. And I don't see adult playground equipment in front of, anywhere in front of the restroom. So, all right, anything else for
No,
Jeff?
sir.
Moving on, thank you. Next is the second reading of ordinance 691. Do I have a motion to read by title only?
I'll make a motion to read it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any opposition to reading? Please do so.
Ordinance number 691, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mexico Beach amending the land development regulations to modify the non-conforming use rule for food trailers, repealing ordinances in conflict to the extent of that conflict, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
All right, motion to adopt ordinance 691. Is there a motion?
Can we have any discussion between it?
Once we get a motion to adopt,
Okay.
we will. Is there a motion to adopt? Okay,
Your Honor, if I just interject,
yeah,
if a motion is not made and seconded, there's no discussion. And if it just dies for lack of a first and second, that means it's still out there lingering.
I know.
So it would be much preferable to go ahead and make a motion in a second. That doesn't mean you're for it or against it when you make those motions.
I understand. That's why I said that it's not appropriate to discuss it unless there's a motion on the floor. That's
Exactly.
why I said that. So,
All right.
Just my 2 cents.
So then I make a motion to adopt it.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All right, discussion.
All right. This goes back to November of 2016. And at that time, we were talking about grandfathering in the two food trailers that were already in place, Shoebies and Mr. G's. And then at the meeting of November 10th, we find out that Mr. G's is no longer there because the owner of the property wanted to use it for another source. So Mr. G's no longer was a food trailer in Mexico Beach. And then in January of 2017, we passed the ordinance, 660 ordinance, stating that food trucks that were on property were grandfathered in, which did not include Mr. G's because he was no longer there. So it was just Shoebies. And so then we have this new ordinance that we want to look at. And I know we talked about this a month ago or so, or 6 weeks ago, and I was thinking that Mr. Shoebies was not, it was less than a year that he was gone, but in essence, it was more than a year.
Mr. G.
You mean Mr. G?
Mr. G's, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, excuse me, I'll make that correction, thank you. So it was more than a year. And so, you know, we have this ordinance 660, and I don't see any reason why we should change it for one person who was not a food truck when we passed it. And that was the main source of having this ordinance, to prevent food trucks from coming in and coming in and coming in. We wanted something. So I don't see any reason why we need to change it when he wasn't a food truck at the time. So that's all I have to say.
So if this does not pass, we would go back to that original ordinance that you're talking about as being effective.
I understand that, isn't that correct? If this one doesn't pass, it goes back to 660?
Correct.
Yeah. Which would include the current food trucks, which is Shuby's.
Right.
Well, that's the same information that we talked about when we said we were going to change it. So I guess now that we've written it, we passed it once, we passed it, now it's come to before us again. And there was positive comment about the location and Mr. G's, and everybody said, yes, that's what we want to do because we think that's a good thing in that location. And so that's what we paid to have written up, and
Okay.
so I'm
All
in
right.
favor.
I agree with you. At that time, Mr. Shuby's or Shannon even said that, it was mentioned here in the meeting that they thought that Mr. G's stopped the location in January or February, and Shannon even agreed to that, and then come to find out, it wasn't January or February, it was 2 or 3 months before that. And so we really didn't have the truthful facts at that meeting, because I'm speaking just for myself. If it were within that year, I was gonna go along with it. But knowing that we didn't have the truthful facts, and we're adding 2 more months, I don't see how we can keep stretching and stretching and stretching things. That's the reason that I'm against it.
And I think I voted against it to begin with. I was the only one at that time.
Well, and, you know, when you look back, and we had discussions of how it was done and the opposition, and when you have time to go back and look at your notes and see what all was said about it, why it was said, how we did it, you know, to come back, I have a problem too, going against what we had voted in originally based on input from the people out there. And, you know, I'm against changing it right now.
Okay. So I don't guess then, I mean, there's no reason to make a motion.
Well, first and second's already been made.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
we need
but,
to
yeah.
call, roll call.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my bad. My bad. But I mean, there's no reason to revert back to, a motion to revert back to this, what I should have said.
Right.
Okay, motion to second. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Ms. Albrecht?
No,
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
No.
Mr. Pop?
No,
All right. Motion failed. Next, special events.
Thank you guys for your time.
This time, Your Honor, I wanted to bring everyone up to date on where we are on the special event process. We had a brief discussion last month, and I was instructed to do some work to bring some sort of policy ordinance back. What I did a special events application. I actually made a policy, and then when I had it reviewed by our city attorney, he suggested that it be made into an ordinance. That has not been done yet, but I figured that it's probably appropriate to review what the policy says so that if we decide to move forward, we know what to put in the ordinance. The application starts out with all the simple stuff. It simply has a checklist to make it easy to people to remember what to put in there. Your simple name of the event, the date, the hours, the breakdown date and the hours, how many participants is expected to be there, how many vehicles might be involved, the organization's name, whether it's a profit, nonprofit, or individual, and of course, contact name. That's always important to have those handy. Make sure that we know whether the event is a private or is it for the public. Is it free? Will there be a charge to get in? Will this be a recurring event? This lets us know here on letter B what type of event it is, whether it's a festival, a carnival, reception, a fishing tournament, whatever. At the event, will there be any alcohol sales, concession stands, anything of that sort? Will there be trailers, lighting, sound equipment? Is there a need then for potable water, electricity, trash cans, dumpsters? Also, a diagram of how it's all going to be laid out. An application fee, event fees, insurance requirements. And this is the thing that I think is very appropriate to make sure that the City of Mexico Beach is listed as an additional assured on the policy by the people putting on the event. In other words, let's take the Gumbo Festival, which was an extreme success for the city. Alcohol was served and sold. The city does not have liquor liability in our insurance. So the question is, did the event sponsor have liquor liability? I don't know that. But I think that future events, we should know that and be listed as an additional insured so that, God forbid, somebody does drink a little too much and have an accident. We don't want fingers pointed to the city. We want it to be pointed to the people putting on the event. Going down the policy, it pretty much says the same thing as the application. The capacity is always a big deal. You know, is our facilities sufficient enough to handle all that? And a lot of times the event probably has no idea when they plan it, because you don't know who's going to show up. You don't know whether it's going to be a rainy day and people not show up. But it's important to make sure we have restrooms that are available, and of course Parker Park did. We want to make sure things are cleaned up afterwards. We want to make sure that is there any desire for street closures, things of that sort. Is there any pyrotechnics involved? Most of the time, probably not. Is amplifications. Is there going to be some sound system to have some effect on the neighbors? So that's where we are at this point. Do you have any questions, comments?
I just have a couple of questions. I like this idea. I think we need to cover our bases. And I think we're being proactive with this. Will special events for Gumbo Festival and tree lighting ceremony, anything that they have, they will need to fill this out, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and all the fishing tournaments that come into Mexico Beach will need to fill one of these out?
Right.
Okay.
Because we're not just supposed to know what they need. You know, we
Right.
don't know if they need traffic control.
Okay.
We don't know if they need a police officer on duty to make sure that people don't get inebriated, things of that sort.
Well, CDC help us with this. For instance, you know, you look up sometime and you see a fish tournament going on, who's producing it? The city didn't know anything about it. Does CDC know anything about it? Or how are we gonna make sure these people get the word out prior to, what does it say here, so many days, 60?
60 days.
60
Yeah.
days, right?
Which I think is reasonable. I like the idea. And I think it takes care of questions that have been kind of floating around before that haven't been answered by the city.
I think we could always just ask CDC when they come to them, because many of them come to them for donation. Maybe we could just say, remind them that they need to fill this out.
And we can
You
look at
know.
who's been doing it the
Yeah.
last 2
And
years.
just send a letter
Send
to
them a
them.
notice or,
Yeah,
yeah.
could do that.
On the insurance mail, instead of, and I wasn't sure, instead of just checking, yes, we have insurance, are they gonna be required to furnish you
They'll have to furnish a certificate.
Okay.
The event fees for the public works, police, fire, that covers everything for what we pay for insurance, et cetera, covers everything.
That's the hope anyway. That's like the loaded rate for the per hour for the
Okay.
employees.
All right.
Also, I didn't put in there is a deposit. You know, a lot of places that I've got copies of their ordinances, there's a deposit of, you know, $2,000 or $3,000, so that if there's something that didn't happen that they should have done and we have to pick up the slack, then we just take it out of their deposit. I don't know if you wanted to go to that extreme or not. Because most of the time, we've really not had a problem in Mexico Beach. You know, most of the time, they're very responsible and they clean up their own messes.
I think it'd be a good idea to have a deposit. I don't know if you need 2,000 or 3,000, but maybe 500 to 1,000, at least 500. But you're right, we've not had any problems, but that's the routine people that are doing this year after year. And that's not to say that we're not gonna have somebody new that we've never dealt with before, so we don't know what their history might be. So that's the way I like that. I mean, why would anybody mind giving us a deposit if they're doing what they're supposed to do? We're gonna give the $500 or $1,000 right back to them.
How does this affect the special events committee? How do you envision this affecting the special events committee?
Well, for the Gumbo Festival, we did not get a forum at all. We had no idea what their needs were. There was a comment afterwards, there were no police officers at the event because we didn't know they needed any or didn't, you know. It will affect them because an insurance certificate, you know, I don't know if they did get liquor liability or not, so that's an expense they're gonna have to go to now, but I don't know they had in the past.
They did have insurance.
Okay.
And the fee schedule?
The fee schedule, that's over and above what we've done in the past. You know, for the most part, because these are things that bring people into the city that buy gas and go to restaurants and whatever. We've looked the other way when it comes to collecting any fees from them.
Well, I don't know that we should collect fees from special events because their fundraiser goes directly to something for the city. It doesn't go to anything else.
Well, it doesn't say that.
Right, but I would have a hard time having special events pay a fee if that money is going directly to the city, which Gumbo Festival does. It goes to the fireworks. And the tree lighting ceremony, there's no fee anyhow. I mean, they don't collect anything. It's a community event.
We can exempt special events from the fees, just all we would require then is a certificate of insurance to make sure we're covered.
I would go for that.
Yeah, I'd prefer having a deposit and no fee. Because I'm still thinking about the person or the organization that comes in here that's never been here before and wants to do this, this, and this. And then if we're not have something set up that we're accustomed to doing, and then we try to do something on these guys coming in that's never been done before, it looks like the attorney would have a problem with that. So, but I agree with you. I mean, the things that are, we'd like to have these events because it helps everybody, all the businesses here, and it's a great thing for the residents. And so I think we should make it as easy as possible, but the city's got to cover the city's responsibilities. And I'm not opposed at all to getting the CDC to help fund some of this stuff, which they do anyway. I'm reminded by Kimberly every other week, but anyway, I'll shut up on
That's
that.
because they do.
Well, I know,
That's because they do.
I know, but they have $800,000 and we get a penance on it. But don't put that in the middle.
Well, they don't, you obviously don't understand their charter then.
Yeah,
That's all can say.
I do. I'd like to see the charter changed, but I don't, did that die? Well, they were talking about it in Tallahassee. Did that die?
I think so.
Yeah, probably so.
Hopefully it did.
Hopefully.
I have one more question on the application fees. When you talk about small events below 100 attendants, and at one point in here it talked about private property. Special events on private property follow standard special event procedure. So are you saying like if somebody gets married on the beach and they have the reception on their lawn in their house, at their own residence, they should go for one of these?
Well, that's why we put the weddings and block parties at $0.
Okay, I missed that part, sorry about that. Read too fast.
All right. Okay. Other comments? So this is for information, this is, what is your expectation here?
Well, the next step is, now that I've got some direction about the special events and things of that sort, you seem to be on board with the insurance requirements, is to, at this point, I'll take this policy that's written, give it to our city attorney, and have him put an ordinance for him, because he expressed to me that's the way to go.
Okay, so the special events, those 3 events that I'm aware of, tree lighting, Gumbo, and the wine festival.
Mhm.
4th of July race.
Excuse me,
The 4th of July race.
is that 4th of July? Thank you, that's right, there's 4 of them.
Right.
Those,
Farmers market, the monthly farmers market, is that covered in this? That's special.
is that a special event?
Special events.
Okay, that is special event, I wasn't sure if that was or not. So whatever they are, obviously, I'm trying to list them, there may be others.
We're growing, it keeps growing, see?
But are they exempt from the fees and the deposits?
That's what we just decided, that that's what the council wishes to
I wasn't sure about
happen.
the deposits and, but,
But they fill out the application, they provide us with the insurance papers, whatever. They do
Correct.
everything but the fees.
Correct.
and the deposit.
I know.
I think, I'm not the least bit concerned with the people who've been doing these things year after year after year.
I'm specifically speaking about the special events committee.
Oh,
That's what I see. Are they exempt?
I think it's appropriate to exempt them from the deposit and the fee requirements.
I agree.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay. All right, so we're gonna sort of rewrite or retweak that or whatever and send it back to us for, in form of an ordinance?
Exactly right.
Okay. All right, anything else on the special events?
That's all that I have, Your Honor.
Okay. Keep going. Number 2, beach vendor.
In anticipation of the vote at the last meeting of the beach vendor ordinance, I had prepared an application. That did not pass, as you know. So, in speaking with board members, in the meantime, I think everyone wishes to bring the beach vendor ordinance back up, but the question is, what was the guiding force as to why it failed? And so, I worked a little bit over the weekend and worked most of the day yesterday. I've taken the ordinance that was on tap for getting approved or voted down. I didn't make any changes from that, except where you see the yellow. So of course, the whereas takes about 2 pages. This is concerning the beach vending permit approval process. I'll read the way it used to be, this middle sentence.
Do we have that in our
You
package?
do not. I
Oh,
finished it
good.
up yesterday, late
Okay,
afternoon.
good, go ahead.
Right. I'll read this like it was previously, starting where it says applications. Applications may include a request to operate a motor vehicle on the beach in the area covered by the permit, but only if the vehicular access to the beach exists within the area that will be covered by the beach vending permit. Now, what that tells me is that unless you have your own access point to your area, you can't access the beach. So I think it's appropriate to reword that to where it says, applications may include a request to operate a motor vehicle on the beach in the area covered by the permit, only if vehicular access to the beach exists within a short distance from the permitted area.
I have a problem with short distance.
The city administrator or his or her designee will determine the acceptable distance. To me, short distance isn't a half a mile. A short distance is a few hundred feet.
My main concern was the size of the vehicles being used.
We'll get to that. So what's your comments on short distance from the permitted area? Because no one has their own beach access.
About from me to you.
No, I think you've got to put so many feet or so many yards. You've got to have a specific amount.
A couple of 100 feet, though, in some instances, puts you coming beside somebody's house or something like that, in some instances.
Well, what I can do, of course, for the El Governor and Mr. Vasquez, that one's simple because it's right next door. It's almost 0 feet. As for the Buena Vista, there's probably, I don't know, 50 to 100 feet, somewhere in that range. So we can put a definite number to it if you prefer.
Well, yeah, and I have trouble, and from the beginning, everybody knows that. We're 3.5 miles of beach. We require one vendor to drive a pickup truck down every road, whether it's 2 miles or whatever, and physically walk his stuff out there. And we allow another vendor to drive tractors, 4-wheelers, pickup trucks, everything. It just does not seem right to me. We're only 3.5 miles. We should be able to figure out a way to get chairs on a beach without riding on this beach.
Okay, let's get to that then. The rest of that area is stricken. This is the language that was inserted by our city attorney, before this was voted on. I just took that out completely. And we'll get to vehicles on the beach in a later paragraph. Further down in that same paragraph, it said that the beach vendor permits are for 12 months. I think it's more appropriate the beach vending permits follow the calendar year, because I think it's inappropriate for someone to get a beach vending permit in July and have it effective the next year as well, until July. So I think as long as they follow the calendar year, that's more into
Makes
what we
sense,
want
yeah.
to do. Here's where we go to vehicles on the beach. The only types of vehicles allowed on the beach by this permit are ATVs. ATVs are defined in 317.003 of the Florida statutes as ATV means any motorized off-highway or all-terrain vehicle 50 inches or less in width, having a dry weight of 1,200 pounds or less. That should be less, not loss. Designed to travel in 3 or more non-highway tires and manufactured for recreational use by 1 or more persons. The Florida statutes further states in 316.2123 paragraph 1, the operation of an ATV as defined in section 317.003 upon the public roads or streets of the state is prohibited, except that an ATV may be operated during the daytime on the unpaved roadway where the posted speed limit is less than 35 miles an hour. Therefore, ATVs shall not be operated on any street within the city of Mexico Beach, including US Highway 98. In order to promote safety for beachgoers, ATVs shall only be allowed within the permitted area before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. Should an emergency necessitate the use of any vehicle outside the above hours on the beach, permission must be obtained from the city administrator or his or her designee. What that means, the tractors and the big trucks and that sort of thing can't be on the beach unless there's an emergency. And we all know that if the hurricane's coming, we're going to give permission to anyone to take a tractor on the beach to get their stuff off.
Right.
And that's just common sense. But on a daily basis, there's no need to have anything but the ATVs on the beach. And having them before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. means you won't be doing it at the height of the crowds and things of that sort. Now, what this also means is, well, the state statute says you can't drive an ATV on a state highway. We've been allowing it for years. And I don't want to be a party to allowing something in case there's an accident. I know we've not had an accident in the past. I don't anticipate there to be. But, in this particular case, the beach vendor in front of the El Governor does have a large truck and a large trailer. And if he wants the ATVs to cross the road, just put them on the trailer and drive them across the road. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are we even with this and even what we tried to do for over a year and a half is tried to figure out how somebody needs to run their business. And to me, that's his job. I think we had 200 plus people vote for Leave No Trace. If you went back and polled, you'd have, I think, a good number of them that wouldn't say that beach vendors were exempt. And I think if we, have such a small area and think all we did the last time was we were going to change the wooden chairs, I don't think that's what we were asked to do. And I think business can be done, and somebody could figure out how to do business without driving on the beach, whether it's an ATV, a Hummer, a tractor, whatever. Again, what one vendor does, another vendor can do. It'd be easier in a location like the Driftwood or El Governor to physically take those chairs down every day when they're rented and bring them back. There's no use to me to just stack chairs up on the beach, whether they will be rented or may not be rented. And I think that's what we were asked to do, to clean up the beach and make it as fair for vendors and residents and visitors as possible.
This section takes care of my problem. And I think I'm not for outlawing business on the beach. Some people have advantages because they've always had advantages there. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But, and it's always worked fairly well. We've not really had any problems with any of the vendors on the beach, other than sometimes the equipment that they brought down to the beach, like tractors or whatever. So, I hear what Rex is saying, but it's, I think the only problem I've seen is not being able to control the vehicles that are on the beach, and this controls the vehicles, especially from before 7 a.m. and after 7 p.m. And that's always been a concern of mine, especially in July and August, when we're so busy, June, July, and August, from a safety standpoint.
But nowhere in there, is anything in there talking about the chairs, what type they are?
We left
Left that alone.
that alone like it was
That's
come
what we said,
September of
yeah,
this.
after the 18th of September.
Yeah, that still applies.
Right.
But you know, the tractor, which it comes up frequently, was only used down there when we was told to get the chairs off the beach.
And 2 hurricanes.
So he doesn't use the tractor, or nor would anyone else do that. That was an attempt to, and he doesn't, and I have to refer to him because there's only one vendor, and we all know who, and it's not like we're talking about multiple vendors here. But the vehicle was only used in case of emergency to start with. He didn't take a truck, or he never used that. Always used the ATV.
Okay.
There were instances where a truck was used, but it's not part of the routine day of his business. So there were no vehicles up and down the beach.
Right.
In terms of a beach vendor. And there is a difference in a beach vendor and a guy that goes to the end of the street and delivers a chair. That's not a beach vendor. He's not supported by a business. So to me, there's a distinct difference between a beach vendor and a guy that does business on the beach. He doesn't have a defined location. He doesn't have a upland business that's supporting him. He's just driving to a street end and putting a chair down there for Frank or Sue to use. So there's a significant difference in how we would approach beach vendors and people just doing business on the beach. The restrictions for me, in order to do our due diligence, if you would, in terms of what we think those 222 people thought about Leave No Trace, it's been stated many times by some of the most avid Leave No Trace people that their intent was not to direct their efforts and energies toward business.
But Tanya Castro came to a meeting and said just the opposite. She was,
Well, Mary Lou Ralston said just the opposite of what
Right.
she said.
so dissension among the ranks.
And my point in raising that is only in, it's not their place. If they wanted it a certain way, they could have written it in there.
Correct.
This table should do the things that are in the best interest of the city. The ordinance that we've written recognizes in the whereases that doing business on the beach is, I mean, it's written in there, if you'll go back to the beginning, that says that doing business on the beach is a positive for this city. We make that statement.
Right.
So I'm fine with allowing to have someone with a common sense to make to have discretion about when it might be appropriate to put a vehicle down there. Because you can't write every instance that might occur where a vehicle might need to go and for a guy doing business. And I'm fine with it being an administrator or a designee. I do have concerns if we're going to not allow him to cross the road. I question the validity of the need to do that when it has been done to load up an ATV and move it 50 feet across the road on a trailer. That doesn't seem practical to me in the location that that particular business is operating. It doesn't make sense to me that we would say this 100 feet right here from the park, from where you store your equipment to where you're gonna take it, you put it on the trailer, you go over there, we're gonna create an issue if we aren't careful in holding him to those kind of standards. So I think that's, I think that has the potential to be something, an enforcement issue that we're gonna be down there. We got it in there. You don't think somebody's not gonna call, say, hey, I got a picture of him crossing the road. That's my point. It's gonna be an issue.
I understand.
Okay.
So how do you overcome that?
Well, how you overcome it is you figure out a way to do it. I mean, I've said before, if I were running out the old governor, I'd ask the old governor, since they have complete control of that area, give me one parking space so I can stack these light chairs up, and as people want to rent a chair, then I'll take it down there. At the end of the day, I'll bring it back. But that's not my job to figure out how he needs to do it. It can be done without crossing the road, without talking about chairs. If we're going to eliminate wooden chairs, then you don't have to cross the road after this year. But let the vendors figure out how to do it.
I could
don't wanna
agree with
figure
all
out.
of that if there was a cause to do that, if there was something in his history or in that motel's history, or there was any conceivable complaint, issue, concern from the public, concern from the motel, concern from the city, concern from anyone. There is zero. There is no cause. And I have a hard time personally governing people when there is no reason there's nothing substantiated that mode of business is anything but positive for this city. I could do that.
And I think a lot of complaints go unreported because instead of going to the chief, they come to the city, and it doesn't matter if it comes to the city.
Well, there's no
And I found
documentation of that.
Yeah, and I found that out because I witnessed something that happened, and I didn't go to the chief. And I sit there and I think there's 7 chairs at a location. Did all seven didn't appear there at the time I was there? How many times did we ride up and down the beach when it's not legal? So I think
he answered that. I think he answered that.
Answer it, chief.
Chief, he's not aware of it.
How many reports? None.
I was even asked by Ms. Castro, has there been any reports? And there
Did
is
I
none.
talk to you about it?
Yes, sir, we spoke when we went to the Music in the Park, and it was an information that you just wanted to know that he was seen. I've also received.
Did he have permission to go down the beach?
Yes, sir, he did. He had called me, and I even have the text messages.
You gave him permission
Yes, sir,
verbally?
I did.
At what time of the day did you give him permission?
I think the day you spoke about, we had 2 times that day. I could look at my phone real quick because I still have the text messages.
I think he called you at 6 something in the morning.
But he did notify me saying that he was going to go onto the beach, and he was going to be going to the Driftwood area.
Well, you know, can I notify you? I'm gonna ride my red Jeep down the beach today.
Well, you can notify me, but I'm not going to authorize that.
Well, if you don't answer the phone, I'll do it anyway and said I notified you.
And if you're reported and it's located that you did in fact do that, then we will cite you.
Okay, well, I should have come to you at first thing at 9:30 in the morning when it was taking place.
Well, I can't dispute that, but he did notify me that particular day.
You know, crossing the I'm sorry, go on.
No, that's it.
I thought you were finished, I'm sorry, Rex. Crossing the highway, Mexico Beach has turned their head on this, ignored it, even though it's a Florida statute that we shouldn't do it. Yes, we have not had any problem, but what would happen if we continue to turn our head and he crosses the highway in 98 and an accident happens? If he gets in an accident, whether a person is hit or another car is hit or whatever, who is responsible then? Is the city responsible, since there's already a Florida statute that says you can't do it, and we've not cited him ever? Not that we should have cited him, because it's always been that way. It's always been that way. So who would be responsible if he was in an accident?
Well, right now, we don't have a certificate that lists us as additional insured, so we will probably get drug into the lawsuit until we get that. But in light of the fact we've been complacent, then we're a party to it.
Right.
And I fully understand that we have not had a problem over the years.
Right.
But state statute is pretty clear. It says they're prohibited on the roads and streets of the state. And,
Well,
you know, sometimes I get asked by some members of the public not to enforce some ordinances. But then when the chips are down, I'm always blamed for not enforcing the ordinances. So we got a state statute that says they're prohibited. How can I not instruct the chief to give them a ticket?
it's like the golf carts that are not what's the correct?
Legal.
Street legal. You know, you can't take those on 98. You couldn't take those down to Gulf Foods and pick up a gallon of milk.
Now here's where Hector can be ahead of the curve. If he gets a street legal vehicle to go across the street, then that solves a problem.
Oh, well, and that goes back to Rex's point. It's the job of the business owner to figure out how to run the business. So,
My comment was aimed at that the ability for him to operate, like when he said put him on a trailer, I didn't say that he wouldn't be, wasn't that what the implication was, that he couldn't figure out how not to do it. I'm just
Right.
saying that would be, under that scenario, would be a difficult reason and would probably lead him to figure out another way.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
my point.
Because the
Okay.
alternative would be more dangerous.
so then that's good to leave that in there, then he
I
has.
didn't say to take it
No,
out.
I know that.
I said I was trying to make my point, and I think it got lost in the shuffle.
No,
But that's fine.
I got it. I got it.
That's fine. All right. Are you, I think,
I have one more thing.
Okay.
Toe of the Dunes, that really, I'm bothered by, because Jerry's Toe of the Dunes, my Toe of the Dunes are different, and when you pull things up to the toe of the dunes, most likely you're gonna be behind something, you're gonna be stepping on the dunes to get them as close to the dunes as possible. And what we're doing is destroying the dunes. Now, do they do it on purpose? No, but I can see it happening. So I would love to scratch out that toe of the dunes area, that they can't put things up to the toe of the dunes.
Well, where are they gonna put it?
That's a business problem.
Good point.
Well, we'll get to that later in the
Oh, okay.
in the thing.
I'm sorry.
Under permissible location, of course, I had to renumber it. I highlighted this in gray because it's a gray area. Because this is about permissible locations. And it says, beach vending permits may be only granted for beach locations that are part of or immediately behind a parcel of property that meets all of the following conditions. No question, zone general commercial or tourist commercial. The parcel that has to be behind a hotel, motel, or restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. But the gray area says, the location is not on the beach, deeded to the city or other public agency. We own the beach in front of the El Governor. The El Governor does not. So we need to change this somehow, because I don't want people to come and say, Mel, you missed this point. He shouldn't be allowed there because it's a public beach.
So what's your solution?
Well, I haven't gotten that far. I just wanted to bring it to your attention to see if you want me to have the city attorney reword that somehow.
So the beach belongs to the city until somebody shows
Take it
us
out.
something else.
Take it out.
Yeah,
All right.
Serves no purpose.
right, I agree.
If it's, Nick's not here, but I would say it, if it, well intentions, but when you try to write everything down, that doesn't even, it's not even happening.
Right. Well, when I spoke to Mario Gisbert, who's the manager of Panama City Beach, extensively, he says that their beach vendor ordinance, their leave no trace ordinance, they're never going to get it done, because every time you get it done, something else comes up to make you want to change it again. So the document is never finished. It just
It's a
changes
work in
over time.
progress. We said
That's
that
exactly
from the
right. That's right.
Till we try something and see what works, then
All right.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say take it out.
Yeah, take it
Scratch
out.
it.
Gotcha. Insurance requirements, I wanted to put in there that make sure the city is an additional insured on the insurance policy so that we're covered. I'll have the attorney, reword that to make it happy for his purposes, but, that's just the minimum requirements. Then we go back to the end where, we didn't mess with taking out the wooden chairs until September 30th of this year. That's left in there. Here's where it says the seawall or the toe of the sand dune. So Linda had expressed a desire to take the toe of the sand dune out. Is that what?
That's just my opinion, I'm just,
Well, to me, that's a definitive line, no difference than the wall, than the seawall. To me, I think you have to have some
That's what-
definition of
Right.
what you want to do. Toe of the dune is, to me, very definitive.
Let's leave it in there till we see a problem with it.
Okay.
I mean, if it proves to be, when that was discussed at one of the discussions, that if somehow somebody interpreted the toe of the dune to mean the middle of the sand dune, well, then we would say, maybe somebody could go down there
Yeah,
and,
wait till that happens.
but I think that's a relative term for a definition of it.
And I think some of the locations to our west have addressed that, and it was a problem, and they defined a distance from the toe of the dunes. And that's where I have a problem, is why do something that's already been proven in other places that didn't work?
So should I check with them and get a definitive number of feet from it then and add that?
Let me tell you what my research of that. There are places west of us that have open beach vendors that do not require an upland business to support them. On open beach vendors, there were issues. On the upland business owners, there was no issue. Because the business monitored what they're doing. The open beach vendors, they definitely had problems. We do not allow open beach vendors. And so I don't think
Don't think
that
it'll be a
there
problem.
would, well, I mean, I'm not saying there wouldn't be,
Right.
But they're having it.
but that was a significant issue where they allowed just Joe Smith to go on the beach and stake out a place, and there was no upland business tied to it. Yes, there were issues. That's not what we're proposing and never have,
Okay.
just for clarification.
Sure. One last thing on the beach vendor. in the application that I had done, I had required a background check for all the employees of the beach vendors. Because especially now in the light of the Me Too movement and things going on there, I think it's important that we ensure that the people who interact with the kids on the beach without parental oversight could be a problem. Then I had another conversation with Mario Gisbert, and I asked him the question flat out. I said, Mario, do you require background checks on the employees for beach vendors? And he said, no. He said, we'd kind of like to, but we don't, and here's the reason why. At what point do you stop being mom and dad? You know, it's not our job as government to tell a private business who they can and cannot have as an employee. So the way they take care of it is through the insurance process. As long as they are listed as additional insured on the insurance policy for the vendor, then if there are any problems, we're out of it. It's not the city's fault. It goes to the vendor, him or herself. So
I like that, makes sense.
So you didn't see in the other stuff where I put in their background check. I've taken that out. But that's a policy decision. If you want it back in, that's what you all.
I think the Upland business has a response. They aren't gonna send a letter to the city. And we need to make that, I think that's a strong partnership between whoever they would agree to allow down there. They would bear some responsibility of, they're not gonna let just something go on down there without some, I mean, that's their place of business. And they're allowing that vendor to operate there. Why do you, what, the sales tax number, what is that for?
That's just our way to ensure that they're paying sales tax.
Well, do you have all of our sales tax numbers on record?
When they make a occupational permit, most of them do provide that for us.
For an occupational license?
I am sales tax number.
That's part of the form? The PIN number or the sales tax number?
Either or, we just have something that shows they're incorporated. But really, we don't care, but it's what's been asked for in the past.
Well, why would anybody care for not paying sales tax? Thought everybody paid sales tax. I think I paid sales tax.
That's just our way to ensure that the vendor is registered to pay it.
What they're talking about.
Well, I know, but it's the same general idea.
You don't have a sales tax.
Hell, I used to.
Sometimes I don't know how to answer.
Sometimes best just let it go, Your Honor.
Rex is laughing, but he doesn't either, so.
That's true. That's true.
I'm just gonna leave it alone. I don't know about, well, she's way down here. She doesn't, she can. All right, so sort of summarize where we are.
Right. Without question, we'll make the changes that we spoke about, in the ordinance. And I think hopefully we might be able to get that down the road now. And the application will reflect what the ordinance says with the addition of things like a sales tax number, and that's just basic stuff. The form requires them to list their pieces of equipment, the tag number, license number, VIN number, and all that stuff. That's just basic stuff to determine what is and isn't part of their business operation. Aside from that, it's pretty standard.
Is it the consensus that we move forward with those changes and come again?
All right.
Agreed.
Yeah, I have a question.
All right, go ahead. What number?
The next page from that. We keep going, just at the bottom of that page, that question. Persons referenced South spouse arrested for refusal or under, are we going to keep that in there or right there?
I think it's appropriate to take that one out as well.
Okay.
Because it has no bearing on it.
Right.
Since we're taking the other one out.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we need phone numbers on that time? You're asking On that page and the page before it, you're asking for name, address, driver's license. Do you have the phone numbers for all these people? Or I know you,
I think
I mean, I don't know if you...
phone numbers is an absolute thing that should be in there. So I'll add it to the form.
All right, thank you. Are we prepared to move to number 3? Or, I mean,
I'm ready.
Yeah.
all right,
On the very end there, it says, the very last paragraph, I authorize the city of Mexico Beach to investigate my background and qualifications for a purpose of evaluating whether I am qualified for the position. It's not gonna, we've eliminated
We're
that
taking
part?
that out.
Yeah, we're taking
Okay,
that out.
okay. I have to just speak this.
Okay.
moving on.
No more.
Number 3.
Number 3 is on for the purpose, Your Honor, that when we check the files of our job descriptions for our employees, they're all in different formats. We have sometimes 3 and 4 descriptions for the single job, and it's like, which one do we follow? 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so I think it's appropriate then for us to have taken those, collate them to the same format, so we're all have them in the same form, as well as looking at the best of those multiple job descriptions. And so the purpose wasn't to get these things approved today. The purpose was to let you know that we worked these things up. We presented them to you for your review. By all means, read them, highlight what you want taken out, let me know what we didn't have and put them in. Another reason we did this is because we did not have a description for the firefighters or the fire volunteers, things of that sort, and the chief did a good job of, getting that for us.
There's one thing you'll see on there for the FLSA status. When you look at the fire, it says special 7K work periods. Firemen don't get overtime till after they work 53 hours in a work week. They work 56 hours a week, and that's what that means when you read that job description. In case you're curious, it just saves the city on overtime. It's just the way business is done for 24-hour employees. So, and that's how when we came up with the pay code, that's kind of where we made them fall too. So that's why you'll see the special 7K work period. That just has to do with how we pay them overtime. We basically pay less since they do work 24-hour shifts.
And another thing we did is we previously had job descriptions for all of the detailed Public Works Department personnel. And we have been cross-training. I say that collectively, more Philip than me, of course. He's done a good job of putting different people in his departments in different positions and giving them the experience of other jobs. And so rather than someone be focused on one little thing, it's appropriate to have one description for everyone so that they can't say, I'm not picking that trash up off the side of the road, it's not my job. Now that we have one description for everybody, yeah, it is your job. So that's why we did that. It is lengthy, but when you're talking about a various number of employees, it pretty much has to be. So by all means, give it a good look, and if you think we missed the mark, we can adjust it any way you see fit.
Okay.
That's all I have, Your Honor, for that.
All right, is there any miscellaneous, or any questions concerning that? That's just, as you said, for our review, give us a chance to mull them over and see what we think. Miscellaneous, any miscellaneous from anyone? I don't know of any.
I don't have anything.
Okay, Chief?
Over the weekend, we had quite a few reports of traffic congestion on 98. We did the best that we could with that. We had a theft of a firearm, and we had a fatality last week that was from a suicide that has been ruled to the medical examiner's office as a suicide, no foul. Other than that, the department is operating the best that we have.
Okay, questions for the chief? Okay. Thank you. I continue to get good feedback from our police department in terms of our people on the street, people skills. I want to pass that on.
I appreciate your
That
passing
is,
it on.
I think some of the most important things, you and I have had that's been discussed here at this table, that is an important aspect of community policing, is having good people skills. And your selection of the people that you have with you, including yourself, thank you for making sure that Mexico Beach has that friendly, helpful, useful
Yes, sir.
when it
Thank
comes
you very
to
much.
policing.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, my wife was very complimentary. She was the one involved with the theft, and she was very impressed. I don't remember who came, it may have been you even. I don't know who came out and discussed the situation with her, but she was very impressed with that. And she's kind of hard to impress.
Thank you.
Chief Simmons?
Yes, sir. Obviously, I've been busy since we passed the assessment. I've got some advertisements to put out this week for the stormwater drain at the station and the roof and some other major repairs that are going to be over the $8,000 mark. So I'm going to work on that. We did have a house fire last week. The guys knocked it out super quick. They took care of it. I showed up afterwards to make sure everything was good. When the house was built, there was a nail that went through a wire, and when they removed the window, it moved it just enough to catch on fire. So fairly minor, but it goes to our statistical reporting. Call volume's up a little bit. We're probably on track to run 400 calls this year. We ran 356 last year, so we are seeing a little bit busier, which is nothing we can't handle. The other thing is there's been talk about what firemen can do when they're not working, or when they're not working our fire or being on a call, and something that's been brought up was possibly bringing beach patrol back. If you guys were interested, I'm cross-training all of them in all types of rescue, which would include, we go to water rescues now, but they'll be more trained and certified. So if you guys wanted to bring that program back, it's definitely something we could do and be out in the community, let people know about Leave No Trace, and, in a non-law enforcement way, encourage the rules and, just have a presence out there. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it's definitely something they could do. So.
Sounds interesting to me. Maybe CDC could buy one of those vehicles to ride on down the
We talked about trying to raise some money for it or something, maybe with the volunteer side. Obviously, the budget doesn't have it, but there's volunteer funds and donation options out there for that.
I'll talk to Kimberly.
I don't think she's going to do that.
I saw your name on her list.
So,
I don't know if that's a published list, but I thought I'd just tell you.
Oh,
It's down there.
it's been there for a while.
but that's a way to get us out in the community and doing something when they're in their downtime, and maybe help in a positive way encourage the rules and let people know about Leave No
I
Trace.
think beach patrol is very positive.
Yes, I
So,
like that.
okay.
Very positive.
Okay, good. That's all. We just want to make
Black
sure.
persons down there doing it.
There's going to be a lengthy training process on who's going to do it, what you're to do down there, and also the fact that one of the persons need to be trained in the event that it looks really bad for a fire department to be on scene when someone's drowning and not go get them. It happened recently last year, and it made national news. So we don't want to be part of that. So, there'll be a lengthy training process on what to do and to make sure it's safe and everything else. And we would look at some sort of UTV, which is like the bigger ATVs or whatever, and that's what.
I have emergency equipment on it.
Yeah, and they could
Pass
still,
out brochures and just a generally good time charter.
and they could go to another call on it too, because fire department, like police, is exempt, so we can, it seats 3 to 6 people. They can, if you have one guy at the station, they can still respond to another call with it, so it wouldn't hinder our services in any way either. So.
I think it's a real good idea, especially coming off on after the assessments. And the more you can be seen around town and helpful in other ways is a big plus.
Well, that's good to hear. The guys are excited to do it. They don't want to just sit around either. So,
Good.
other than that, we're just on track with everything. Adrian's been working really hard on figuring out the budget and what we can start spending now before money's coming in, and going from there. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Clark? No, excuse me. There, did it?
That's all right, Mayor.
You're so quiet over there, you slip by me.
Looks like a big
I've done that to him about 3 times.
As far as utilities and public works goes, we've had a lot of water breaks here lately. We had what we thought was a 10-inch break. Luckily, it turned out to be a 4-inch break. Last week, we got a lot of service lines blowing out of saddles here lately. We don't know what's going on.
maybe it's just one of those, we're fell into that 7-year itch type things, and hopefully we'll move out of it pretty quick. Public Works has been rocked and rolling. The pavilion down at the canal started, as well as the fish cleaning station at the boat ramp. We should, I hope, expect to pour concrete within the next 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, at one or both of those locations. We've got the trash cans on the beach fixed. There's a lot of those that were tore up, but now it's all fixed. We've definitely seen an uptick in garbage pickup and tonnage. That's definitely gone up in the last 2 weeks or so. Same as the garbage on the beach. We went out this Monday, picked up a whole garbage dumpster full. Speaking of dumpsters, we did sell the garbage truck this past weekend at the auction. We sold it for $15,500. So fingers crossed when that check comes in, we'll do the necessary steps, whatever this clerk tells me we need to do, but we'll use that money towards dumpsters. We gotta get some dumpsters. We need those in the worst kind of way. We only have one on standby, and it's not in the greatest of shape, but it'll make us get due. Beyond that, it's just these water breaks are eating us up right now.
Question? Public Works. On the Public Works, I sent Philip some information. I had received multiple questions about our recycling, about whether or not our recyclables actually become recyclables or they just end up in the incinerator. That has been a question that I've had asked of me several times. So I called and got some information, sent it to Philip. Maybe at the next meeting, you might could just make a copy of that spreadsheet, just to show people that we are doing an excellent job. We do have some contaminated recyclables, but overall, I was impressed that, and I think we're going to get a sign that's about no household trash. That's the number one cause for contamination for recycling. But at the next meeting, we'll have to have a little spreadsheet just to show you, but I don't know if y'all get any requests or concerns about whether or not it actually goes to the incinerator or does it become recycled. So Mexico Beach, we were high on their list of, for doing a good job.
I can send that spreadsheet out to everybody, plus have it for the next meeting.
Yeah, or just, yeah, you could just send it to them by email if you would like. It's just it's just an information thing. I found it interesting in talking to that lady about how that works, so.
We'll put it in the packet as well, Mayor, that way the public can
Yeah, there you go.
see it
There
too.
you go.
And before we move on or move away from the Public Works, there's one more thing. I've been getting, I should say, several calls here lately along the south side of 98 on this end of town, and the concerns have all been stormwater issues. We don't have stormwater on that side other than when it runs to the end of the street and has a chance to perk out through the sand. I mean, that's basically our stormwater on this end of town for the south side. I've got to go meet with another person as soon as we get out of here about stormwater. And everybody's question is, what's the city going to do to fix the stormwater? We're working on it. You know, it's definitely in the project, in our minds, to get a solution to this. But I do know for sure that when I leave that person's house today, I'm not going to give them the answer that they want. And the answer that they want is I want to fix, you know, as soon as possible. So I just want to put that on everybody's radar that, you know, we've been getting bombarded, or I have been here lately, about the south side drainage.
We're talking about washouts?
No, sir, we're talking about the
Standing water?
the water that collects at the end of the streets, at the beach access points. Now, sometimes it's simply because a sludge layer will build up on top of the sand that we need to go scrape off to allow that stuff to perk out quicker. I think when you get 5 inches of rain in 2 hours, you're going to have standing water, no matter what kind of drainage system you have, but it will run off. The south side streets don't run off, they just have to perk through. So it's the standing water issue. We fixed one area On South 39th Street, not at the very end, but up towards 98. We were able to fix that area because when they built that place, they installed a stormwater system. But a lot of them are the end streets that there's no stormwater pipe, no nothing. It's just it's supposed to run off and perk out. I can't remember what street it's on, but there's one who complains quite often, but their entire property is concrete. I don't know what, other than, I've told them before they need to tear the concrete out, but they're blaming us for the issue. So I don't know what to do with that one, but just want to let everybody know that's,
All
we
right.
get complaints about that.
Appreciate it.
I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I missed my opportunity before. About the bridge, the wooden bridge that's supposed to be replaced, and we ran into trouble with that.
36th Street.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
I was told that the St. Joe Company and DOT have reached easement arrangement.
Oh, fine. Okay.
That's what I haven't seen it, but I was told that had been done.
So
Now, I don't know about the schedule for the bridge. I never have really asked for.
That's in May.
That's May.
May?
May was the original date to let it, but I think it's been back to August.
Good Lord. During the
It's
busy-
happening this year.
During the busy season. That
How
makes
about this year?
Yeah,
Is that
it
close
makes-
enough for you?
that makes sense.
August,
No,
August
they're still going to
2018.
pave the road through and all the way out to the
Yeah.
highway?
Yes, that was
They
the
have
easement
to.
issue.
Well, gee, I'm glad to get that done. So I'm keeping my mouth shut, too. You know,
That ain't gonna
you know,
happen.
I don't think that's possible.
But that's supposed to, that easement thing,
has been said.
like with the city, now, we just sidetracked it with St. Joe, but DOT and St. Joe, that couldn't be sidetracked, that paving
I
the
got
road
you.
through there. But I was told that they did make concessions to allow the road to be paved through there.
So, excuse me, did I hear you say that they're going to start on that this May?
No, you didn't hear that.
What did I
This
hear
year.
about May?
This year.
That was the original date when DOT and the city the first date given for the bridge was May, but there's no confirmation that that's still a good date.
Okay.
So we said this year.
Yeah,
But
okay.
because we do not know a date.
Okay, thank you.
Did I say that
Right.
enough to
And of
make
course,
sure?
that's the letting date, that doesn't mean when it's gonna start.
Oh, right. Okay, and they are through with the road.
Paving.
Highway 98, the paving
Our
project
section, yes, sir.
is complete.
Our section, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And the sidewalks, you said.
Still on top of that, yes, sir.
You're on top of that, because there's a lot of damage from somewhere. Okay.
From this project, I've already spoke with Anderson and Columbia and DOT. They're gonna fix the areas that we identified as their cracks, but not the ones that we know that weren't created by them.
Okay, and did you see that area that I was? I asked-
26th Street?
On 19th, between 19th and 20th.
Oh, yeah, yes, sir.
Something heavy had to get on that. Is that part of it?
It's not part of the
Not
paving
part of
project.
it?
No,
What
sir.
else would have done that?
It was the property owners at the time that they were doing a bunch of work over there. They're the ones that broke it. It was I don't remember if it was a dump truck or what it was.
Oh,
but it's-
okay.
We do know about that.
We
one,
know
yes, sir.
about it, okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We're ready.
All I've got for you is the fire assessment process. The bill should be going out, I believe, early next week. We're finalizing our spreadsheet of changes today, sending that on, of the people that are exempt, not exempt. Also coming up soon will be a whole big budget amendment packet for the council, moving the fire fund out of the general fund and creating its own fund. It's taking a lot of time. I have to build the entire backside. We haven't built a new account since we had new software, so we'll see if I get it right, and I'm sure I won't the first time. But that's what's happening, so that'll be a huge budget amendment that'll be coming before the council. And then the CD we approved to renew at the last meeting, I've got the signature forms with me today to get signed. That's all I got.
Questions? Mr. Mayor?
No question that I'm proud of all the work that all of our city employees do. But as we are on the doorstep of our busy season again, I'm particularly proud of these 4 department heads. You know, one sitting over here and 3 of them over there. They get a lot of complaints from a lot of people in the public. And in spite of some of the negativity they have, they manage to somehow keep as positive as we could expect. You had alluded earlier to Chief Kelly and the culture change there. Chief Kelly had not been a police chief before he got this job here, and he has learned an incredible amount in the time he has taken that job. And so no question, I'm proud of the work that he has done and continues to do and take it in the right direction. As for the Fire Chief Simmons, he's come to us with a lot of experience, and that's exactly what we needed in Mexico Beach to do the job that he's done in the past, 6 months? Look what's happened in 6 months. You know, we've come a long way, and we continue to make strides, and will do so, and we'll have a first-class department when it's all said and done. Look at the job that Adrian does. I teased him one time at a employee dinner that he doesn't work very hard. That's because he makes it look easy. It doesn't mean he doesn't work hard. You know, he doesn't go home at 4:30 every day. He works on the weekends and the evenings occasionally. He's not just the city clerk. He's the chief financial guru. He's the human resources person. He's got a lot of responsibility. And for a small place like this, he does an excellent job. We just went through the audit process, and that went through in less days that we've had in the past. So that means over time, he's learned what's expected and what needs to be done. And as for Philip, I can't say enough about Philip. I think he has the hardest job in the city.
He became a wife. He became a wife.
You know, the winter is usually, I don't want to call it our downtime, but we're not as busy in the winter with picking up as much trash and things of that sort. We don't have to mow the grass like we did in the other parts of the seasons. But this particular winter, there was a lot of people who were sick. There were a lot of people who were out who's hurt. We have one employee that's been out for quite a few months, and they're still not back. So in spite of a smaller workforce, he's been able to accomplish a lot. Look at the wooden sidewalk in front of Shell Shack. Look at the 14th Street walkover. Look at the benches they put out at various places along the city. Look at the work they're doing, to get the cooler in at the boat ramp. Look at the pavilion they've helped put the posts in, things of that sort. You know, project after project, and Philip stepping up and getting her done. So I just wanted to say I'm proud of who we got in the places we have them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I agree with every word you said. It is, we do have, and I hear the employees here, they got a little click in their heels, and that's that's good to see. That's good to see. We've, and all of you folks take pride in what you do, and we have that kind of community, and I think it's worthy to always note that it's important. It reflects who we are, and I think the employees do a good job of that. Any announcements? Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Thank you everyone for coming. All right, Adrian, you got stuff you need to sign? Just that one, is that all? I'll come over and
To say, that was the greatest thing at the Gumbo that Tommy did. I'm always on the cleanup committee, right? There wasn't no cleanup to do like that.
He's just an all-around great individual.
I mean, every time I was selling t-shirts, and every time I looked at this guy was almost running.